The Ascent to Godhood by Ji Yang. Copyright 2019. Published by Tom Doherty Associates, a trademark of Macmillan Publishing Group. As read by Scandal. Chapter 1. What do you want? Can't a woman have a drink in peace these days? I'm not in the mood to talk. Look at all these motherfuckers partying it up, celebrating the news. Well, good for them. I'm in mourning. See, the woman I love is dead. Funny, watching everyone cheer what you've been working for all these years, yet feeling nothing but sorrow. Go join the party and leave me alone. I've earned some time to grieve. All right, you're persistent. I see that. Who did you say you were again? Well, I don't know you, and Achaea has many acquaintances I don't care for. Why should I listen to what you have to say? Yeah, sure. Everyone's got a sob story. Look, I'm sure your lady, whoever it was, you loved her too, but it hurts like hell, but it does. But no one knows what it's like for me. You think you do, but you really don't. So your lover was a tensor. What of it? Of course I know who she was. Achaea kept me updated. Do you think the machinists don't communicate? I'm their leader. I don't have time for this. Fine. If you're going to stand there and bother me, you might as well buy me a drink. At least I'll get something out of it. You know, I'm surprised. You don't look like the kind of person who would be with a tensor. Don't puff up, that's a compliment. But I get it. Look at my life, after all. Tell me a bit about you. How did you come here? How did you get into this mess? A lowlife just like you? If you're trying to get in my good books, you're not doing a very good job. So you were an outlaw, born in the margins, were you? How much of the real tensorate did your beloved show you? You know I saw everything. I was on top of the world, at the peak of heaven. That was a life, that it was. It's funny, all those years ago when I was just a girl and she was just a girl, who could have guessed what would happen? What she would become? What I would become? It's funny. If you want to hear the story, I can tell you. Heaven knows nobody wants to hear her side of it, and with her dead now, maybe nobody ever will. No one can tell her story like I can. There was no one else close to her, you know. No one. Strange day is upon us. Her guiding hand is gone. The protectorate is about to change in ways none of us can predict. We're plunging toward an unknown future, and I am an old woman. The time for me to weave and play with the threads of fortune is long over. Hecate is gone. Maybe once I tell this story, I'll be able to release her from this hollow inside me where she's been trapped for so long. Take a seat. Get comfortable. Get yourself a drink. Take notes if you want. This is a story few have the privilege of knowing. Chapter 2. Where do I even start? Where do you begin a tale that tangles like bramble across the years and twines with fine and cruel threads of fortune? How do I tell the story of the one who burned the world to ash around her and rebuilt it in her image when it's the same story as my greatest and deepest heartbreak? How do I balance the silhouette of my private emotions with the vast scale of the world turning around me? Maybe I'll start from the beginning. My beginning. After all, I'm the one telling the story, am I not? I was born in a small village north of Zhejiang, the third of 7 children. My parents were farmers. Most everybody was. It was a poor area, and we were poor people. Growing vegetables was the only way to get by. Nostalgia puts a taste in your mouth, doesn't it? When I think back to those days, I remember peace. The mountains at dawn draped in white mist, the smell of fresh-cut grass, the feel of loamy clay between my toes. Mother kept an enormous pot of congee bubbling on the stove. Its fragrance greeted you when you walked through the door. Ah, the crisp scent of shallots frying. Sometimes I think I miss it more than anything else. That smell in that kitchen, combined with the waft of jasmine growing in the front courtyard. What about you? You look Kebangalan. Grew up on the coast, did you? Different climate, different foods, but poverty tastes the same everywhere. Boiled food, everything watery, too cold or too hot. The dreams I had in those days. All I wanted was to escape the gray, rocky life that I led. I imagined simple pleasures, a house with stone walls, a little garden, a goat or two. My imagination was so small back then, so pure. The year I turned 12 was a hard one. The rains came too much in the winter, and then not at all. Crops grew spindly and yellow in our fields, fish died in the ponds, and a pallor of death wafted through the air in the heated evenings. It was a strange year to come into adulthood. The world was withering and blackening around me, yet there I was, hips and thighs growing plump, legs and arms growing long and strong like tree branches. One morning I put on my trousers and realized how high their hems hung above my ankles. When had that happened? I couldn't say. Changes. They just sneak up on you, the little bastards. That was the first thing I learned that summer. The second was that there is no logic to the world. No balance. The world outside my window was dying, yet my body was flourishing. Where was all that energy, that life coming from? The dust and brittleness of my village were disturbed by a new arrival, just as the last of my mother's rice ran out. A man. No, a vulture. A scavenger waiting for the moment before a living thing became fresh meat. We were a family of 8 crammed into that small wooden shack with one stove, 5 children, my parents, 1 remaining grandmother. I remember staring up at that man as he stood in the doorway with his smooth face and his neat robe in deep colors, and the idiot child that I was thought he was the most handsome thing I'd ever seen. How important he looked! His gaze swept over me and my siblings huddled listlessly in the heat, and my heart stopped when his eyes settled on me. What did he see in me? That I was pretty? That people would pay money for my company? That I was this poor and gullible little fuck with shiny, round eyes? Maybe he wasn't even thinking that far. Maybe he was just plucking up children like peaches off a tree. You have to understand, out in those areas, we didn't do gender like they did in the capital. You get born as one thing. You're expected to stick to it. I popped out, they looked at me, said, "Girl," and that's how it was. Do I have regrets about it? No, but I'm sure there are many who do. And when things are that hard and food is a struggle every season, people cling to structure. It makes their life easier, see? So my parents wouldn't part with sons. My sister was too old, and the youngest was just a baby. Worthless, just another mouth to feed. Couldn't put it to work, could we? So what was left? Just little me. I don't know if my parents ever regretted selling me to put food in my siblings' mouths. They were typical farmer stock, not the kind to talk about their feelings or very much at all. Only my older sister, Kuai-Jing, cried when she heard. I don't know if I cried in return. She had one precious thing, a carved jade elephant she'd been given by a passing merchant. She pressed it into my hands. "Come back soon," she said, clinging to dull hope that my going away was only temporary. "Remember us," she said. I told her it was impossible I would ever forget her. Then I was whisked away from the only place I had ever known. On nights I can't sleep, I like to torment myself with an imagined world where my sister was taken instead of me. A world where my big sister became a courtesan, and I stayed behind in her place. What would I be? A seamstress? A farmer? Some dull lad's wife with swollen ankles and a voice hoarse from shouting? I'd have a swarm of children, too. Children to look after the house, children to tend to the fields. Children! Fuck, I'd be miserable! No, I don't regret my life at all. So I fucked up in all directions, but at least it was an exciting fuck-up, you know? Of course, that's not true. Even my sister did not end her life as a simple farmer. Maybe I would have become a rebel all the same. Maybe it's in my family's blood, all this getting into trouble. Right, I get distracted. So many memories. It's been such a long time since I've thought of my girlhood, it's easy to get lost in nostalgia. Lost in myself. You know, all those years she never asked me about my past. She didn't think it was relevant. Never did. And you know, I felt the same. I threw away my whole life for her. My whole identity. I wanted to. Anyway, there I was, 12 years old, never been farther than 2 days' trek from my village, being brought to the capital. The man who bought me was called Wei. I don't know if it was his real name, I never found out, and I was never able to track him down afterward. He was nice to me at first, made sure I ate enough, made sure I slept enough, had a bag of soft flowered sweets that he would offer me during our long journey. He presented me with marvel after marvel. I'd never been in that kind of cart. I'd never seen slack craft, ever. I would stick my head out to watch the ground speeding by under us as we floated over it. Wei bought 3 other girls during his trip, 2 who were already traveling with him, and 1 he picked up in the village next to mine. Their names, let's see, what were they? There was Yixing, of course, and I think the other 2 were Sarah and Min. He told them my name was Huarong, which it was not, but because he said so, that's what it became. Why the surprised face? You think I was born Lady Han? No, that too was someone else's name for me. All of us were about the same age, except for Sarah, who was older, maybe 16 years old, tanned and broad from working in the fields, like a boy. Min was very quiet. Then there was Yixing, my neighbor girl, who I had an automatic connection with. I don't think we became friends, but it felt like that. I had no one else to talk to. Ah, Chengbi, the city of the Golden Phoenix, the cradle of the Protectorate. You're provincial, like me, so you must remember what it felt like to encounter the capital for the first time. The red-peaked roofs, shoulder to shoulder, stretching all the way to the foot of the mountains. The throngs in the markets, shoulder to shoulder, filling the air with the noise of their bargaining. The dense smells that come and go as you pass along the street. Chestnuts in hot sand, the steam off soup cauldrons, the sewage in the back alleys. Wei took the cart into the densest parts of the city, and the whole way I peeked out of the window with my mouth hanging open. How could I not? My senses were being assaulted from every direction, on every level. I had never imagined that people could live like this, stacked on top of one another, in constant motion and contact. The city felt so alive, but in a different way from the mountains and the fields that I knew. Out in the countryside, being among living things feels full and serene. Everything in Chengbi is small and frantic. Our cart passed through the hot, bright center of the city and kept going. I thought we might stop at one of the many inns with their silk ribbons and gilded signs, but we didn't. Slowly, the buildings grew sparser, the people on the street fewer and more poorly dressed. I asked Wei, "Where are we going?" This preview has been created for you by Lizen Scandal Lit. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more quality book previews. Thank you!